My name is Trey Stefurak. My given name is James, and I was a third. Grew up in New Orleans, so people call me Trey, so I go by Trey with my colleagues and students. I came to USA from Auburn University Montgomery. I was there for 3 years in their psychology department, and I came here to College of Education to help teach counseling and to help start a psychology doctoral program in 2007. Yeah, I think it includes philosophy of teaching, supervision, and mentoring. They all kind of come from the same thoughts. I know when I first started teaching, it was all undergraduates. So my philosophy was far more didactic than it became when I started working with graduate students. And I think my philosophy changed when I started having to supervise students' clinical work more than just teach. So now I would say my philosophy's very much sort of focused on problem-based learning and inquiry-based learning. I think, look at my classes now and my supervision and even my mentoring of students, and it's less of giving them an answer than it is helping them make sure that they have their question clarified and helping them sort of walk around the question, sort of Socratic dialogue. Probably in the classroom at some point in graduate classes, if they don't get to sort of, if there's a prescribed answer, I eventually will kind of, tell them what the answer is. But in psychology and counseling, there's often not an answer. What we're really trying to get them to learn is a way of thinking that I tend to think of as divergent reasoning, to generate multiple, workable, pragmatic answers to a person's problem that any of them could possibly be helpful or lead to a good outcome versus, finding the right answer. And I think you see the same thing in teaching, training teachers and training, physicians too. It's same sort of thinking. So very practical, applied learning. And I teach one class in ethics, and that's probably a little more scholarly, abstract, But even there, a lot of it's reading vignettes, giving them real-world situations. I love telling them the example of a case and withholding the outcome and letting them, kind of predict what they think the outcome should have been or was, and then kind of letting them see what did the courts or colleagues and that thing actually decide, and watching them either be validated or surprised, by these high-minded ideals, but how they actually get executed in the real world of community work and health service and stuff like that. I think, back in grad school, just having times when the clinical work as a psychologist died down, and there was just these long days back in those days in early 2000s spent in the library. And then, but not just that, but then usually in work groups and things, and then I would look forward to that time that week where we're going to come back together in a research team and kind of dialogue, and so those two twin things, that was sort of the last year of my doctoral study that felt like that and I've never felt like that since then. Tried. I think I have a lot of my career is trying to recapture that sense of having space to think and read, and then a social space to do something with it. This is the question, what is my research, is the question that has been my Achilles heel, I would say, as an academic. I remember when I was an undergrad reading William James, and he said that he was an intellectual grazer, like a cow. And I always, whenever I'm asked this question, tenure, I always picture sort of a cow version of myself just grazing. And that, I like that, but it has some practical problems. So that's my preface to the answer, is that I'm probably too spread out. But my standard answer is I study youth placed at risk. That's one thing. And then I'm also interested in two other things that are sort of smaller. One is religious behavior, sort of spiritual beliefs and feelings, and how those relate to why people seek help, if they seek help, how they cope, good and bad. And I've had some interest in how people in human service settings, how they use things like religiosity and spirituality to cope with the work, like a lot of what we've looked at is people that are working with traumatized people and looking at their own spirituality as a provider, and how does that help them, or how does the lack thereof hurt them, or vice versa. And then the third area is really interested in how do we train mental health professionals, and in that area, it's not so much as research, more just a philosophical interest, is looking at how there are sort of positivistic aspects to that. There are objective things that you have to do and teach. And then what's interesting to me in our field in mental health work is there's this very strong constructivist aspect to that training. And how do you help model and teach learners to that you and they as supervisor and supervisee are constructing a reality, and then get them to see that with their clients, but really get them to see both parts of that. So the last thing I did in that was edited and wrote a chapter in a book with Dan Surrey and Rob Gray, and that allowed me to really get re-interested in that and how technology either disrupts that process or makes it better, or and I really actually go back and read that chapter a lot. I really like it. It makes me think about things that we wrote for that. But so at-risk youth, religiosity, spirituality, and kind of training mental health professionals. And 80% of my time I run a program with a colleague in social work named Valerie Bryan called the Mobile Juvenile Court Collaborative. And through that we have bachelor's social work students, master's mental health counseling students, and doctoral psychology students that all work together on a joint service and research team. So every student's involved in providing some sort of appropriate type of service for their level of training, and all of them are involved in some sort of research work. And most of our research work is really on-the-ground evaluation work. So we're not doing a lot of basic science. We're helping the court system and related agencies look at their own data, find their own truths in there, and apply them. So I consider that practice-based evidence. Is instead of us being the scientists and coming down and, like Moses from Mount Sinai, bringing them the answers, we're trying to almost teach these agencies to be their own researchers. And then we pull databases out of that and try to publish with that too. But we're really proud of that. The students really like it, and we just had our first doctoral student go to graduate, and she's going to be a postdoctoral fellow at San Antonio's Juvenile Court. And it's great because she's doing the same things we taught her to do. She's a psychologist there, she's practicing, but she's also helping them develop programs and evaluate programs, and sort of up their level of skill at that. So it's been really nice to see somebody pay it forward, with what we've been trying to do. So we've been doing that since 2008. And I guess I feel like I'm paid to be curious and to help other people be curious in systematic and disciplined ways, but nevertheless help them learn to be curious. Whether that's training therapists or training researchers or working with colleagues to develop programs, the two things that I feel like are part of my professional identity that I carry in the area are humility and curiosity. There's never enough answers. There's always relevant questions. So you have to be humble. You have to know that you don't have all the answers.